Hey guys, I wanted to go over some updates that I've made to my add-on Source Engine Collision Tools. I've been updating it quite a bit over the last 6 months and since my last video on it. And I'm just going to go over some of the new features that I've added. Now, more recently, I added a brand new operator that uses a completely different method to generate the collision, and it uses the UV map, and specifically the islands in the UV map. So you can see all these UV islands, right? For this 3D model that I created, and every single one of these is basically converted into a separate hole, and the results are dramatically better than all of the previous methods that I included in the add-on. They're better for individual props and characters like this. You still wouldn't want to use this new feature on terrain or entire scenes. I've noticed that it tends to combine things together into holes that it shouldn't for those. So this is really much more for individual props and characters. But for those, it works really well. And let me show you. So let me go ahead and press recommended settings and then generate UV base collision. All right, and see how fast that was? It's also much faster than the other methods. And the result is much cleaner. It did generate 44 holes, which is still above the 32 hole limit, but I have a handy little operator down here in the cleanup section. Where is it? Right here. Oh, remove thin holes. So if you press that, it removes the thinner ones. And now right away, you are now underneath or within the 32 hole limit. And now it's now only 27 holes. And with a little bit of manual editing, you can reduce that even further. And here's how I recommend you do it. Just highlight little pieces like this. Press Control L to select all linked faces, and then run the convex hole operator. I happen to have that on my quick favorites, but you can find it, I believe, in the mesh menu. So right here, mesh. There it is right there. So use that, and there we go. That now it's just one hole instead. And if we do that for these two, let's do that right there, convex hole. Okay, and then now let's run the force convex button. It's 13 holes. That's less than half of the original result. Now if I run the thin holes operator one more time, it will probably remove the eyes, and there we go. So now this is a pretty clean collision mesh for this character. And you could go even further if you wanted to, maybe combine these two together and these two, but this is already pretty clean. And of course, if you wanted to reduce it even further, use a decimate modifier to reduce the complexity, like that, and then apply it, and go back to the add-on settings here, and just press force convex, and there we go. So now it's even cleaner. So you can see this is much more efficient of an operator than all the previous ones that I've included before. Let me show you what the results are on this one. Another prop that I created. For curiosity's sake, let me show you what the seams look like, because the seams are ultimately what basically determine where the holes are generated. And so this is what the UV map looks like, right? If I generate a UV base collision, here's what the result is. Pretty clean, right? Now, you probably still would want to reduce the polygon count with a decimate modifier on this, or, instead of doing that afterward, just reduce the ratio, the decimate ratio right here, and then it'll decimate for you as it generates the collision. See? Very clean. This would be very usable in Source. That's only 20 holes. And as always, my add-on does speed things up. It does do a lot of stuff for you, but it is always good to clean stuff up manually if you can, because for example, you might want to combine some of these further yourself. Maybe these could be combined and merge them together, convex hole. See, the result is really not that different. And it looks like, see right here, it generated a thin one. Oh no, it generated two in place right there, so you definitely want to merge that. So yeah, use my add-on to get a head start on the collision, but you should still inspect it afterwards and clean it up afterwards. Now let's try it on this one. Generate UV-based collision. And there we go. I forgot to see how many collisions how many holes that was. Oh, that was 31. Okay, so that's still within the 32 hole limit. And of course, as always, you can merge these together, clean this up just a little bit, in literally less than a minute, you can make this even more performance friendly. This right here, you probably wouldn't want that there anyway. You can delete these. Delete that. Or just merge it with this larger one. You could just do that too. Just merge them all together like this. Control L is your best friend when you're doing this, by the way. Convex hole. There we go. See? Now, force convex, that's 20 holes. Already reduced by about 11 holes. And we can merge these together too. Control L, convex hole. There we go. 19 holes. See? So that gives you an idea of how much more useful this operator is for individual props. Okay, so I definitely recommend using it instead of all the previous methods that I've included in the add-on. But I'll show you in a moment that it doesn't seem to work very well on scenes, entire scenes, so it does have its limits. These are just some other random models that I downloaded. I didn't create these, whereas these I did. I made these myself, but these are just some ones that I downloaded from the internet. So I can show you how well this feature works on ripped models, if you happen to work with those, with Barry's mod or something. So let's try this one. All right, this is pretty good. You might want to combine some of these though. I think this part right here, it has a hole in it because I had decimate ratio too low. Let me try increasing it. Let me try again. Here we go. Yep, see, so now there's no more hole there. As always, clean it up afterwards. You can definitely merge some of these together like this. Control L, convex hole. Okay, and just as a precaution, if you really want to be careful, just run the force convex button on it. That always guarantees that it'll be convex. Now let's try it on Patrick. Okay, so it works technically, but you might want to fix this part right here so that there's it's more accurate to the original mesh. And so what you can do, and this is another cleanup technique, you can use Blender's own bisect tool right here to split up the hole like this. So we can do that, and then you'll mark that as a seam in edge mode, and then we'll do the same thing on this side. Oh, okay, it looks like there's two in place. That's weird. Let me delete that. Oh, it's the front and back. Okay, so I'll do it on the... Let me just merge these together first, so I can operate on both at the same time. There. So now I'll use the bisect tool, and in wireframe mode, it's easier to see. And split that there, and then mark seam, and then again, select with Control L, bisect, and then there we go. Okay, once again, mark seam. All right. Now I want to cut it across as well. So I'll select everything again here, not the eyes, and then bisect. Okay, and there we go. Mark seam. Okay, so now what I can do is I can delete this section, Control L, X, faces. Okay, so now I'll split this, Control L, and then Y, the Y key, and then this again, Y key, Y. Okay, now if I run the force convex button on this, watch what happens. There we go. So now I have a more accurate collision mesh. Of course, you'll want to go through it and maybe delete thin parts like that, or just run the thin holes operator right here. There we go. Now let's see how many holes. 12 holes, not bad. Now let's try it on this cow from Zelda. Okay, there we go. Not bad. This probably can benefit from the thin holes operator too. Yep, much better. Now it's only 5 holes. Now let me show you what the result is on an entire scene. Watch what happens. Okay, that's a mess. So obviously you don't want to use this operator on like an entire level. It's not going to work well. Maybe if you split up the entire level into different parts, it might, like for example, this, or like a section of it, it might work better on that. But don't use it on the entire thing. Okay. Now, two other features that I've added besides this new operator, I've added these two new buttons, the dissolve button and the post merge button. And what the dissolve button does is it lets you disable the automatic cleanup that happens behind the scenes when you're generating a collision mesh. Normally, when you're generating a collision mesh with either this button or that button, the add-on will do a limited dissolve on the mesh, and it'll do some other extra cleanup behind the scenes so that there's not a lot of extra unnecessary polygons, which helps make the result cleaner and less complex. The problem is that if that's happening when you need exact accuracy. You want a collision hole that exactly matches every single triangle in your scene, and some people do prefer that, then you'll want to disable that. But I don't recommend disabling it for most of the time. Only disable this if you need exact, insane level of accuracy, okay? For example, if you're porting a Nintendo 64 level to source, and you want a collision hole to be generated for every single triangle in that terrain of your level, then turn that off. It'll work better without it. But if for more complex scenes or newer games, maybe GameCube and after that, you'll probably want to keep it on. Okay. Now post merge. This is another feature. This does a secondary merge operation at the end, right after the collision mesh is generated. It will merge anything that's touching or in the same coordinate together, and then it will convexify it again. And so what this does is it tends to result in much cleaner results. So you'll get a much lower amount of collision holes. So this can be very handy if you don't care about accuracy and you just want something that's very clean, a much lower amount of collision holes, and this will work great for that. But most of the time, you probably won't need it. Okay, it was actually a feature that was requested by one of my YouTube subscribers. So yeah, I do listen to what you guys say, by the way. There's still a few more things I haven't talked about. Down here in the compile tools, I basically souped up the generate source engine QC feature. Now you can actually specify the surface property. So, like if you want to generate QC files for collision meshes and designate all of the different parts, all the different split up parts as maybe a rock material or wood or grass, you can do that now. So it's, you don't have to go and do that manually in the text editor anymore. That's very handy. And then I also added the ability to export hammer brushes as a VMF file. And this is not very recommended because much of the time you'll find that Hammer complains about invalid geometry. I think it works best on large objects. If you make collision meshes as hammer brushes for really small objects, it will usually start complaining in Hammer. Hammer will start complaining like crazy. So just keep that in mind. It does let you specify the brush texture. So for example, the invisible texture, all these other tool textures in Hammer, you can specify those. An additional feature that I also added is a QC override system. So now if you go to the object properties and you go down to the bottom and you'll see the custom properties here. If you press new and then you add a new property, make it a string type, and then name it something that would normally be added to a QC file. So for example, the scale command or opaque, all of those QC commands, you can add them here now. And when you export the QC files with my add-on, with this button right here, it will add all of those automatically for all of the ones that happen to start with a dollar sign like that. Okay. And if you need to clear them, there's a button for that too. So you can remove them from every selected object all at once. And the reason there's a copy button is because the custom property settings here, you can only add a custom property to one object at a time. That's a limitation in Blender, unfortunately. And so that button right here will let you copy all of those overrides to all selected objects. So that's very handy. All right, and there's still just one more thing that I still want to show, and that's the multi-object support. So now I actually reworked nearly all of the operators in the add-on, and now you can actually generate collision from all of the selected objects. So watch this. Selected all three, right? And then I'll press generate UV-based collision. And there we go. So when I first created the add-on, it was pretty much just one object at a time. It only worked on the active object, but now most of them should work on every selected object. The issue is that the recommended settings button still only works on the active object because, it generates the settings just for that one object. And so if you have multiple objects selected and then you press recommended settings, it's going to give you misleading results, possibly, because it's generating these optimal settings for the active object, which in this case is this one right here. You can see the yellow outline on that one. So keep that in mind, and because of that, I still recommend that you do one object at a time. Don't go crazy. Be patient. You don't need to do multiple objects at a time. But hey, the functionality is there if you want it. Just be aware that you might get not quite optimal results on some of your objects because the settings that you were using were meant for just one of the objects that you had selected. All right, so keep that in mind. Okay, that's about it. I still regularly update this add-on and I'm still working on it pretty much every week. So if you have ideas, suggestions, recommendations, feel free to drop a comment. I do read what you guys say. And as I said, this feature right here was added by me because someone suggested it. So I do appreciate all of your feedback. Thank you guys.